Hello, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, and welcome. My name is John Keefe, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at the Nam Center for Korean Studies here at Michigan. It's wonderful to see all of you here. And on behalf of the Nam Center, I would like to welcome you to what I am sure will be an extremely exciting and stimulating event. It's also my privilege to introduce today's speaker, RHEE. As many of you likely know, RHEE is an interdisciplinary artist whose work weaves across multiple genres and multiple media to explore cultural dislocation, gendered interactions, and the complex nature of social, ethnic, and racial identity within a transnational context. Her work is at once challenging in its creativity, politically engaged, and often playful. And I think we're all going to learn a lot from hearing today a little bit about how she incorporates these different elements and different dimensions into her artistic practice and vision. Born in Seoul, raised in Michigan, and currently living in Germany, she has a BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and an MFA from the University of California at Irvine. And her work has been shown in an international array of venues, most recently in New York, San Francisco, Montreal, London, and Germany. Berlin. She has also been awarded numerous awards and fellowships, and I hope she will forgive me if I cannot mention quite all of them here. But they include Fulbright and Jacob K. Javits fellowships, a DAD fellowship for study in Germany, artist residency fellowships at the MacDowell Colony and Malay Colony for the Arts, funding from the Puffin Foundation and the Berlin Senate, and first prize in the visual arts competition from the AHL Foundation, New York. As you know, today, Ms. RHEE is going to speak about her current project, which is called Modern Beauty Ideals in the Age of Digital Technology, or If I Can K-Pop Dance, I'll Be Part of Your Beauty Revolution. And in one moment, I'm going to ask you to join me in welcoming her, but before I do that, just two very quick announcements. The first is please turn off your cell phones before we start. And the second is that the Nam Center is going to be hosting a week-long screening of The Handmaiden, Korean film Agashi. So if you're interested in free tickets to that event, please see Clemente, who's right here. Please see him after the talk, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest. So now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming RHEE.
Okay, first things first, I do have to give a little bit of a warning because there might be some language that's considered obscene or offensive. And the next thing I want to do is just address for what I think is kind of like the white elephant in the room. I arrived actually on the 9th of November to find out the election results. And because I define myself as a political artist, I feel compelled to have something to tell you, some type of opinion or words of wisdom, and I have to say I got nothing. I'm pretty confused about the whole thing. And also, I would, somehow it's also part of my confusion is what's going on in South Korea. And this is also very relevant to me because I decided to reclaim my South Korean passport in December. I'm going back to Korea to get that. So I struggled with words because I feel really quite clueless and, I just don't know what to say. So I realized that actually the best thing for me to do is to go with my original plan. And that would be to share with you my work, share with you how I became interested in art and politics, and give you a bit of insight of my studio practice and how I cultivate creativity in my daily life. So I'm really honored to be here. I'm grateful that you came. And I want to thank the Nam Center for Korean Studies for the very surprise invitation. And I'd like to thank Professor Nojin Kwak and Do-hee Morsman and Clemente Bege for all the coordination. And then a big shout out to the Stamp School of Art, who, they first contacted me with the initial invitation, and a very special thanks to David Chung. Thank you. So the title of my talk is called, If I Can K-Pop Dance, I'll Be Part of Your Beauty Revolution. And I have to admit that the talk is rather not about K-pop. It's a little bit about K-pop, but it's mostly about the beauty revolution. And it's a nod to a very famous feminist quote by Emma Goldman, which is, if I can't dance, then I don't want to be part of your revolution. And as John said during the introduction, the very lovely introduction, he said that I have another title, which is kind of cultured and intellectual, this modern beauty ideals in the age of digital technology. And this was a title that I developed in Germany because, humor is often seen as being capricious. And if I needed to be taken seriously, I needed to have a serious title. So that's the title I use when I'm presenting to a German audience. So my talk is about an hour long. I'm going to introduce some past projects to frame the context for this particular work in progress. And I also want to say that, I'm not a scholar, but I engage with scholarly material. So I'm first and foremost a visual artist. And although I am very interested in scholarly material and academia and collaborating with scholars, I react with objects. So what I do, my conversation with them ends up being with images. So this is an image of a work in progress that's supposed to foreshadow what I'm going to show today. And as you heard, I am a Michigan native, and I grew up in the Clem. Does anyone know where the Clem is? It's at Mount Clemens. So it's this nickname that I developed with friends to say, where I'm from. And when I was living in Detroit in the Cass Corridor, it gave me a bit of street cred. Hi guys, I'm from Mount Clemens. Yo, I'm from the Clem. See the difference? So after I got my MFA at the University of California at Irvine, I got the DAAD to go to Germany, and I've been there ever since, from 2009. And Berlin, has not been easy. I mean, first I had to learn a foreign language. Did you know they speak German over there? And then I had to figure out my studio practice. And the main, I would say, focus that, really gave me the confidence and the success in my studio was that I had a committed studio. And what I mean by that is it was a dedicated space away from my living space. And so it brought me a type of routine, and it gave me, confidence as well to create work and to start showing there. And so I was really lucky because in 2010, about 10 months after I had moved to Berlin, I was awarded a subsidized studio from the Berlin government. And it was very far deep in the former East. And about maybe 4 months after I moved, I had the studio there. Oops. Oh, there's something missing. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll just tell you what it was. There was another slide. For some reason, it disappeared from my presentation. There was a book that came out. It was published in Germany called Deutschland schafft sich ab. Have any of you heard of it? Which means in English, Germany does away with itself. And it was written by a former politician and a economist by the name of Thilo Sarrazin. And the book's basic premise was that the immigrant population to Germany was reluctant to integrate, and that they manipulated and they just used social services, and that their IQs were lower than that of the native population. So I'm just trying to give you sort of a sense of what type of xenophobic atmosphere that I moved into with going to Germany. And a month after this book was published, it was a very large bestseller. It was extremely popular. Angela Merkel, she publicly lamented the failure of multiculturalism. And then a month after she said that, I think that was probably September of 2010. And in November of 2010, I was coming back home from my studio, and I was physically threatened and chased by neo-Nazis on the S-Bahn train. And so now with the rise of Pegida and of the Alternative for Deutschland, which is the AfD, this experience, 6, 7 years ago, it really compels me to think about, what are the ramifications? How did those things manifest in what these politicians said? Hate-mongering and this type of racist rhetoric from the book. And then from Merkel, what seems is very, very harmless, right? It really impacts the ways in which people, think about each other and, how people treat each other in society. The German nation itself has a very, tenuous notions of what that means and who gets to call himself or herself German. And so as an artist, as a visual artist, I think about, what can I do, right? Because I often feel like in despair because the mainstream sees the work that we do as artists often as, frivolous or useless, not practical. We're not contributing to a capitalist society. And so I have this quote that I want to share with you that I have in my studio. I posted it on the wall. And it's from the late civil rights activist, philosopher, author, and Detroiter Grace Lee Boggs, who I knew from high school. And she said, to make a revolution, people must not only struggle against existing institutions, they must make a philosophical, spiritual leap and become more human beings. In order to change, transform the world, they must change, transform themselves. And so I think about that, and when I go to my studio, what can I do in my practice to transform myself? What can I do to transform society? There's another, actually, quote that it would be helpful to keep in mind during my presentation, and that is that art imitates life. And that's attributed to Aristotle. And then, much later, Oscar Wilde said, no. Life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And so what happens when the life imitating the art is competing with the art and it's winning, it's more compelling, it's more provocative, it's more sexy than the images that we as visual artists have been trained to make. And I think about this quite a bit because of my research in the digital field with this project. I see things on the internet and on social networks and apps, and I think that is like a piece of performance art. But I also see a different type of perspective. It's like sort of this obstacle because everyone can be an artist these days. And I wanted to mention that this is something that University of California, Irvine professor and visual artist Daniel J. Martinez, whose work I greatly admire, he constantly brings up this question in his practice, right? And so I've been thinking about it though with new eyes because I've been so deep in digital technology and looking at it and how that's affecting beauty practice. And I also recognize that this access to technology and these tools that I've begun to use in my practice, I didn't have those before. So it seems to have affected my engagement with the do-it-yourself cultural generation, and the digital platforms have opened up different resources to me and really affected the way that I think about my work, how I define my work, and how I put it out there. So I'm going to show an example of what I'm talking about. This inspired my art practice. This is probably what I would call a mashup video. It's very short, just to show you an example. And it takes footage from the German version of The Super Nanny, which is a reality television show. And I just randomly found this. Okay, so I'll just translate it for you really quick. So the nanny, she keeps saying, no bad words, no bad words. And then the 5-year-old child keeps saying a very bad word, which would be in the English language, the equivalent to the C word. And this was a very controversial reality television show in Germany, but it was quite popular. But it was criticized because of its use of docu-fiction and portraying very unrealistic family violence. But I found this video really horribly appealing. And let me explain. So I'm a foreigner. I'm living in Berlin, and this is the segment of the language that's being cruelly held away from me. Foreigners are not encouraged to use crude language. But knowledge is also power. And I lived for several years in the city without hearing any insult words for an Asian person because I just didn't know what they were. Although, ching chong is pretty universal. So I went on this journey. I tried to learn all of the insults, swear words, expletives, problematic, idiomatic expressions, because I started seeing that this is the part of the language that separates the non-native speaker to the native speaker. And so I made this video as kind of a karaoke video gone bad, so you can learn how to curse like a truck driver, swear like a sailor, and in essence transform yourself into a native German speaker. And there's actually a translation. I don't know if some of you got the translation that's on the back table, but I really recommend it. If you're not going to be offended, I recommend that you check it out so that you can feel the full power of Ach du heilige Scheiße, which is what it's called.
Ach, du heilige Scheiße, du Schlampe, Luder, Landpomeranze, Kackbratze, Schreckschraube, Stinkstiefel. Bist du eine Tussi oder ein Bimbo? Gib mir dann einen Negerkuss, du Flittchen. Arschkriecher, Arschgeiger, Arschkrampe, Arschficker, Arschloch. Bist du ein Korinthenkacker? Du Erbsenzähler, du Schattenpacker, du Ordnungsnazi. Bist du schwul? Tunter, Schwanzlutscher, Warmduscher. Ami, geh nach Hause. Schwarzarbeiten ist illegal. Ihr steckt alle unter einer Decke. Ich sehe die Asche auf deinem Haupt. Schlitzauge, Kanake, Reisfresser, Fiji. Wo verkaufst du Zigaretten? Tut mir leid, aber ich verstehe nur Bahnhof. Bist du Ossi? Du kannst mir sowieso nicht das Wasser reichen. Du Hackfresser, ich schneide dir ein Gesicht. Kampfmutter aus Prenzlauer Berg, ich habe etwas zu sagen zu ihrem klugscheißenden Rotzblag. Halt dein Maul, du Frechdachs, oder sonst bringe ich dich um die Ecke. Du Spast, bist du nicht ganz dicht? Meckerzieger, sauer mach lustig, Ausländerwichser.
Okay, so now I'm going to introduce a project that I developed that was a natural development from these other works that I was doing about the German language. And this I worked on for about a period of 2 years. It's called the Chocolate Kiss Project. So when I was living in Berlin for the first couple years, I was confronted with hearing this very strange word in reference to these chocolate treats. This video I'm not going to show today, but you can check it out if you're interested on my website. And, they're called chocolate kisses officially now, or foam kisses. So that would be Schokokuss or Schaumkuss in German. And I kept hearing, the first time I heard it, I was at a party, and it was a white German, who kept referring to them as a Negerkuss. And so I was really appalled and confused because I can understand what that means. And I went and I asked him about it. And apparently, this chocolate kiss used to be called that officially until the 1980s. So if you imagine, they had these sanctioned official packaging with this word on it. And then I would hear it over and over again. Other people would be saying it. And I was dumbfounded and also kind of naive, so I would confront them actively when I would hear them use the word. Like, why were they using such an outdated racist term? And I always got resistance. They were always defensive. And their reasoning was that they didn't mean it. They didn't, in the usage of the word, they didn't mean to be racist, and therefore it wasn't racist. Komm, es ist gar nicht böse gemeint. And I found that these folks have this very strange connection to the word. They feel very nostalgic when they hear it. It's something that reminds them of their childhood, and they have positive memories of it. And obviously, German history is very different from the United States, and they didn't have, slavery in the same way, and their colonial attempts in Africa were, for the most part, failures in their minds. And so they really do live in this kind of bubble, and they think that if I don't mean it to be racist, it's not racist. Of course, this is not every German, but these are the Germans that I confronted with the word. I started thinking about it as a kind of artifact of German identity, this cultural artifact, this chocolate kiss. And so let me just show you this next slide. And so I started making experiments in my studio with these pieces. Maybe it's a little bit similar to Zwarte Piet in the Netherlands. I'm not sure, is anybody familiar with Zwarte Piet? Some of you, yeah? So Zwarte, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with it, but I'm Middle Eastern, and we have something called Masanada, which is like so it's pretty similar.
It's probably very similar. Well, Zwarte Piet is actually not the chocolate kiss, but Zwarte Piet is this so-called tradition that they do in the Netherlands every Christmas, where they have Santa's little helper dressed up in blackface. And not just blackface, but complete with an afro wig and some type of prosthetic to make really big red lips. And they feel like it's part of their old tradition, and they're reluctant to give it up, even though it really does hurt people, not only who live in Europe, but it hurts people who live all over the world. So I was curious about it, and I decided that I also needed to look into the historical usage in the English language as well, in a commercial context, what existed as well in the past. So this is the same book with two different titles. The book on the left was published in 1939 in November in the UK. And the book on the right was published 1 month later, but in the United States. So, we can see there's already a difference between political correctness even back then. It's based off of a Black British minstrel song. And the US ended up actually changing the title of And Then There Were None to another problematic title, which is The 10 Little Indians. And apropos Germany, it took them until 2002 to change the original title of the book to And Then There Were None. And so of my artistic experiments, I'm going to show you one video. It's originally 7 minutes, but I'm just going to show you a 3-minute excerpt. And it's called And Then There Were None. So in case you were wondering, there were 10 chocolate kisses that we acted out in the video piece. And with this work, I was really interested in exploring and examining the ways in which bodies of color, is that right? Yeah, bodies of color, I thought I said that opposite, are produced, reproduced, and then reduced to sexuality. And that's always at the intersection of race and gender, right? And I saw the confrontation between the two performers as changing over time. So sometimes it's awkward, sometimes it's aggressive, passionate, and even tender. And then I started to articulate the work as something that could evoke and be in dialogue with the theory of racial triangulation, and that there was this kind of implicit reference to the hostilities, between the Korean American and the African American communities during the LA riots. So, what is the racial triangulation theory? And this is a term that was coined by professor and political scientist Claire J. Kim, who I had the pleasure of studying with at the University of California, Irvine. And she says that Asian Americans have not been racialized in a vacuum, isolated from other groups. To the contrary, Asian Americans have been racialized relative to and through interaction with whites and blacks. As such, the respective racialization trajectories of these groups are profoundly interrelated. So I also think of that work as, the kind of general viewer of that work being in this very standardized racial and gender position, meaning the person who's looking at the work is a straight white man. And in that assumption, I'm drawing on the work of Laura Mulvey from her essay, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, where she claims that spectators of mainstream films, like Hollywood films, they're always conceptualized from a male point of view. So we all know we watch something and we're supposed to identify with the male protagonist. But if you noticed in my piece, there's not this male protagonist, as a straight white man in the film. So the racial triangulation actually gets enacted in the space in which the work is being viewed. So it's kind of a virtual racial triangulation. So imagine it's in the gallery, somebody's sitting on a bench and watching this video work, and then you see the triangulation happening outside the screen. Here is another performative racial triangulation that I see. So this, I feel like it's a really great performance art piece. And I'm assuming that most people know what this is, but I'll just unpack it a little bit. So, especially because we're very close to Detroit, this is very, very relevant to us. So we see the bromance between Dennis Rodman and Kim Jong-un. And what I find to be excellent, fascinating, is do you see the soju bottle at the bottom? Kim Jong-un made this soju brand to commemorate their friendship. And if you notice, it's so great. I found the photo that they based the soju bottle image off of, so it's at the top. So I grew up, in the Detroit suburbs, and I was in middle school when Dennis Rodman was playing for the Detroit Pistons. And I loved him because he was such a weirdo. Like, he was the ultimate rebel. He was the bad boy. He was the bad boy of the bad boys. And he constantly tied his hair different colors, and you never knew what type of, new nose ring or, type of earring he would have in his ear. So his visits to North Korea, he likes to call them basketball diplomacy. I think he's been back 6 or 7 times. And there's even a film that came out recently called Big Bang in Pyongyang, which I'm really dying to see. But I see this as also this form of the racial triangulation theory, in the sense that their friendship is portrayed, in the media, on the screen, in the internet. But the U.S. government is waiting passively outside, not playing a role, but just looking and waiting. Okay, so now I'm going to focus on the project, the main project of today. And I want to say that it's still, a work in progress. It's a work that I came to from personal curiosity. And obviously, I knew that there was, something really fantastic going on in South Korea for, in terms of beauty industry and beauty practice for a long time. But it didn't really catch my attention until maybe about 5 years ago. Because in Germany, I sort of live, under a rock in some way. So I'm not quite aware of what's going on all over the world, because I'm sort of really deep in my practice. But I finally got an article that they published in the German newspaper about the Korean beauty industry, and I was super interested in it. So I was just so hungry to read all of the different articles that I could find, and most of them come from U.S. media outlets. But according to a scholar, Sharon Hae-Jin Lee, who I actually talked to quite a bit about this project, she said that the first interest of the South Korean beauty industry began in 1993, and she quotes a very problematic article from the Wall Street Journal that claimed South Korean women seeked to go Anglo with their Caucasoid features. And as I said, mine didn't start until probably with Hallyu, the interest in the popular Korean media wave. And the quote that I found repeated over and over again, and in almost every single article that I read, was that 1 in 5 South Korean women have had some form of cosmetic surgery, compared to only 1 in 20 in the United States. And so I'll be honest, when I read that, I believed it. But I will now say that I'm very skeptical of that statistic. But in any case, at that moment that I read those articles, I decided I needed to look more into this, and I decided to go back to Korea. And at this point, it had been almost a decade since I had returned. So I imagined that South Korea was like a land of cyborgs, and that, everyone had gotten some type of, modern technological enhancement to have a perfect body. And so I was really nervous because I thought that my ability to pass, because I could pass, in the past, as long as I didn't open my mouth to reveal my terrible Korean language or my awkward American accent, I was safe. But now I thought, they're going to know as soon as they see me. My appearance will give me away. I will be outed as some type of outmoded creature. I will be seen as kind of this relic from a long, long time ago. And also, you have to remember, I was still using a flip phone at this point, so I knew that Korea was also really highly wired and has the fastest average speed in the world. So this is a question, do Koreans want to look white? This is a question that comes up time and time again in the minds of journalists. All of them sort of agree in their reporting that Caucasian features are desired. But we can really ask this question, right, of all non-white people who decide to get plastic surgery. I mean, interestingly enough, when a non-white person decides to do cosmetic surgery, it's called ethnic plastic surgery. It's very strange. And this is an interesting quote that I read. According to The Atlantic in 2013, K-pop has created a completely new beauty aesthetic that nods to Caucasian features but doesn't replicate them. So now I'm going to show some images that really helped me unpack these links between medicine and beauty ideals, creation, and gender. And this is an image of the anatomy lesson of Nicholas Tulp, which is by Rembrandt from 1632. And it was commissioned by the Amsterdam Guild of Surgeons. And It's showing a so-called public dissection. And these were quite popular back then. So they did them in public theaters. It was a social event for, all members of different social strata. And people paid their admission fee and they could watch this. And, from the perspective of being an artist, I found this quote very fascinating from Dr. Anthony Griffin, who's like this, famous reality television surgeon. And I always had interest in art. I still oil paint today. And I just thought, OMG, you can be a doctor and an artist at the same time. OMG, why didn't I think of that before? So I want to underscore that, historically we see male artists that are gazing at and drawing and painting and sculpting female models, just as disproportionately we see male surgeons reshaping and reforming women's bodies. And so, yes, I'm concentrating, on the South Korean beauty industry, but South Korea is also not a bubble, right? I see it as a microcosmos for the ways in which women's bodies are controlled and consumed worldwide. So Extreme Makeover made its appearance in 2002, and the Korean version, which is called Let Me In, began airing in 2011. And there's no doubt that, they were influenced by US reality television, yet I would also claim that US media outlets and reality television is also influenced by reality television and the digital media that is happening abroad. So it's very much a transnational phenomenon. And my work also addresses the rise of video tutorials and beauty blogs. It's become a kind of do-it-yourself spectacle, right? So there's consumers and creators that are really creating a new kind of digital beauty revolution. And so the next piece I'm going to show you is my YouTube beauty tutorial. So it's about 4 minutes long.
Hi guys! It's been a long time since I posted my last video, and I know a lot of you have been asking me to show you how I make my eyes so big and beautiful. And I wanted to say thanks for being patient. I finally got enough time to create my how-to tutorial, the perfect double eyelids. So as you know, I have monolids, and my monolids are pretty strong and thick. I actually like to call them my monolids of steel. So I've had to try a lot of different methods and a lot of different products to find the perfect look for me. And I'm just going to show you a couple of products I've tried. This one is eyelid glue, and the result, I didn't like it very much. I didn't like how it made my eyelids feel. And the next product I tried is this eyelid thread, and guess what? It was too weak. It was too weak to do anything to my monolids. And the last two products I tried are eyelid tapes. This one is just sticky on one side, and this one here is, there's adhesive on both sides. And this is the winner. This is the one that I can really recommend. And I'm gonna show you how I use this product, and I'll show you the final look with makeup. So stay tuned for the next video. 하지마 제발 그 말은 so this is the final look with makeup. I think it looks fantastic. My eyes look so much bigger and I look so fresh and awake. You won't believe how much brighter everything looks. And my boss even said that I look really trustworthy and not so foreign. Thank goodness for choice feminism. If you like this video and you want to see more, then please like it. And I'll see you in the next video episode. Bye!
Thank you. Okay, so you probably recognize the music, right? Does anyone know what music it is? So it's a remake. It's a remake of a classical opera. And it is, has anyone seen Carmen? It's the habanero aria from Carmen. And it was appropriated by Park Ji-eun, this pop star, mega pop star from Korea in 1997. So I thought it just was so perfect to use for this video. My original intention with the video was to upload it on YouTube, but after making it, I realized that if I did that, then I would be basically making fun of people who wear these eyelid tapes. And my intention is not to shame people for what they choose to do with their bodies. I'm interested actually in examining these cultural forces at play, you know, that impose a type of, you know, beauty standard on people that then bring them to do certain things. And I'm not impervious to it at all either. I mean, when I was in Korea, I also felt, you know, quite conscious of my appearance. So, you know, and one thing I want to say is, you know, this video, for example, what I mention is like so-called feminist choice, you know, which is really supported by neoliberal capitalism, and you know, another cultural force is, of course, white supremacy. I mean, which really has affected how we talk about a universal beauty standard. So here is a very funny and disturbing plastic surgery ad that I saw in Seoul this summer, and it's another cultural appropriation from France. This is a painting called Liberty Leading the People by Eugene Delacroix. And it's commemorating the July uprising of 1830, which toppled the King Charles X of France. So in the original version, we see this woman, she's personifying the concept of liberty. She's, you know, marching forward with the people over the bodies of the fallen, and she's holding the flag of the French Revolution. And then in the Korean version that we see here, the corpses are conveniently absent. They're being covered up, you know, by the name of the plastic surgery clinic. So my thought was, maybe they didn't survive their plastic surgery. And so this image appears, I mean, the original image appeared towards the end of the Age of Enlightenment and the beginning of the Age of Romanticism. So I kept thinking, this is heralding in a new type of revolution in Korea, and that would be the digital beauty revolution. Okay, so here is the work. This is the first showing of the work that I did at the Neue Berliner Kunstverein, which is in Berlin. And it's a group exhibition of 15 artists who won the Berlin Visual Artists Fellowship of 2015. And my work is in the corner. And it's an installation called the Multiverse Portraits. And what it is it's different images of me where I'm contemplating versions of myself in parallel realities. It's, of course, you know, inspired by the numerous cosmetic surgery advertisements that we saw in Seoul, that we see in Seoul, just like that one, as well as research that I did in Korea. I did several cosmetic surgery consultations while I was there. So here's the image that references the before images, obviously. So it's basically the real me. I'm not wearing any makeup. It's extremely unflattering lighting, and I'm also wearing very unflattering clothing in order to emphasize my life dissatisfaction and my so-called defects. And then the Gangnam universe is obviously referencing the after images of surgical portraits. And I used all of the different procedures that were recommended to me when I got those consultations. So, for example, like the double eyelid surgery, the Barbie nose rhinoplasty, the forehead and cheek volumization, and of course, the breast implants. And some of the other ones, the surgical procedures actually that I used were because of the popularity or the severity of them. So for example, the V-line or the jaw slimming surgery, the lengthening of the legs, the fixing of the O-legs, the aegyosai, which is the kind of cute fat under the eye. And then my favorite, which is called lipped. It's the upward turning, a permanent upward turning of the mouth to a permanent smile. And it's apparently really popular with flight attendants to repair their resting bitch face. Okay, so here's the last parallel reality. So it's called the ethnic hardening universe. And this refers to a particular term that was coined by plastic surgeons to represent, to define what their non-white patients want. And they call it ethnic softening. So when I heard that, I thought to myself, I wonder what it would look like if I went in the other direction. So I rendered myself in a universe of ethnic hardening. And the second title, which is Self-Portrait Exaggerating My Mongoloid Features, is a nod to a work by Adrian Piper from 1981, who's a conceptual artist and philosopher. So both of our works really address this idea of essentializing ethnic traits, which is, like defining a particular anatomical feature as being Korean or being Western or being African or being Asian. And this is also something that Sharon Hagen Lee addresses as well in her work. And being accused of trying to change your race through plastic surgery is not new. I mean, I can mention two of the most well-known cases, Michael Jackson and Fanny Brice. And in fact, the first documented double eyelid surgery in the United States was done in 1926, and it was a Japanese man who desired to marry his white girlfriend, whose parents disapproved of his race. Does everybody know about this? Okay, I'll just say it again, just so everybody knows. So this is a Brazilian man who in 2014, he underwent plastic surgery to look South Korean. Apparently, he became obsessed with K-pop and Korean dramas during his time as a foreign exchange student in the country. And he spent over $3,000 and 10 operations to get this desired look. And ironically, he had to go back to Brazil to do it. And I'm assuming that there's not much demand to turn a double eyelid into a monolid. So now I'm going to change gears a little bit to focus on a female part of the body and the obsession with this body part. So surprise, we're going to talk about breasts, or boobies, bosom, knockers, tits, cans, headlights, torpedoes, love muffins, hooters, sweater puppies. Did you know that there's 100 nicknames for breasts? And this is a painting by Jean Fouquet, Mother and Child. And you have to imagine, it's being painted in France at the end of the Middle Ages and at the beginning of the Renaissance. So according to Marilyn Yalom, who's a scholar, we can blame Charles VI for the sexualization of the breast. This particular painting, she says, marks the transition between the sacred breast of the Middle Ages and the erotic breast of the Renaissance. And the woman who's portrayed here as Madonna was his mistress, by the name of Agnes Sorel. So at that time, you know, the ideal breasts of the Renaissance were high, round, and small, you know, which is based off of a Greek and Roman beauty archetype. And you know, contemporary plastic surgeons, they always claim that the beauty ideal is a universal beauty ideal, and it's always based off of the Greek and Roman archetype. But if that's true, then the big bodacious breasts like that of Kim Kardashian aren't compatible with the beauty ideal. So how did this beauty standard change and why? And of course, you know, throughout time, it's changed. Breasts have had very many personalities, right? The beauty ideal has changed in size and shape. But I'm going to talk about, you know, currently, how did bigger become better? And why is it that in the United States that small breasts are undesirable, even considered a deformation? And in 1950, the Journal of Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery called small breasts a disability with the name of hypomastia. And in 1953, Pageant, this is like a Sunday newspaper supplement, so it was like sent to the masses. It claimed that 4 million US women were suffering from an ailment called micromastia. And even if you look at like very current statistics, in 2015, the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery, it claims that nearly 1.5 million patients have undergone breast augmentation surgery. So it's the most popular procedure throughout the world. And on a side note, the least popular surgery, can anyone guess what that might be? Pardon me? Anybody else? I'll just tell you. It's penis enlargement surgery. So through this research, I found that the first woman to receive silicone implants was a Texan, and she received them in 1962. But before her, there was a non-human subject that received the first silicone implant. And her name was Esmeralda, and she was a dog. So this is my imagination of what Esmeralda looked like, because I couldn't find any images or illustrations of her anywhere in any archive. And, you know, I made her a border collie because border collies are actually the smartest breed of dog in the world. And apparently Esmeralda, she didn't like her breast implants. She was very dissatisfied. So she tried to chew them out. And I just thought she was such a smart dog. Here's another quick contemporary example of also, you know, non-human animals that have to suffer for the sake of human beauty. And I have to admit, I actually did try this snail mask, the snail slime mask in Korea. And the snails aren't hurt. Hurt. They're not damaged, they don't die during the process of extraction, but they're extremely stressed out. And I saw one of those videos that shows that. So I just wanted to show that as a contemporary example of that. And then I found out that the woman with the largest augmented breasts is a German, and she's an online celebrity named Bishina. Okay, so it's like very Frankensteinian, I know. So, you know, this brings us full circle. We first saw like the dogs with the human breasts, and now we see the human with the pug heads on her breasts. But she's really like a real person. She's an actual person, and she doesn't really have pugs on her breasts, right? I have to explain the title of the work. It's called Shikha. And if anyone speaks German, then it's possible that you've heard this before. It's like, you know, nice sweater puppies or nice torpedoes or nice jugs. Shikha means nice, and mupsa means pugs. So I love these like really humorous play on words. And these 4 drawings are currently on view at the Asian Art Museum in Berlin. And it's in this show called Schnittmengen, zeitgenössische Kunst und die Überlieferung, and that is intersections, contemporary art, and tradition. The curator Uta Rahmen-Steinert, she's very interested in having contemporary artists show their work in the museum to have a dialogue with the permanent collection, objects and prints from the permanent collection. And so along with these 4 drawings, I'm also showing a site-specific sculpture. And this is where it begins. So you see here the light box in Chinese characters. I'm sure many of you know what that says, but I'll just say it says cosmetic surgery clinic. This is the door to the gallery, and at the top, you see another light box. And this is the title of the work. So it's called This Way to Apgujeong Rodeo. And of course, rodeo refers to Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. And this is a street that's located in Gangnam, in Apgujeong in the district, that they have very many plastic surgery clinics there. So I was there visiting. You go through the doors, you turn to the right, you go through the gallery, and you're greeted with 2 more of these light boxes. And then you walk into the main space of the gallery, and you see the pillar of light boxes there. So that's where it ends. And this is the documentation of my show. So you see the pillar of light boxes next to the doggy booby drawings, and then they're being placed juxtaposition to these works, which are 18th century Chinese woodcut prints of women, noble women during, their going about their daily business, and who have probably undergone foot binding. So the curator was very, very intentional with this particular comparison because she wanted to ask, deeper cultural questions about how we define beauty and what is barbarism in the pursuit of that beauty. Here's a close-up just of the one little gallery. At the top it says co-shop, bottom VIP. Okay, so I'm just going to explain what it means. So ko is nose in Korean, and shop is like shop or store. So it's like nose shop. And then we see on the pillar, there's MVP, there's winners, wannabe, bon bonita, top class, W, and Yutopol Bom. And Bom means spring in Korean. So these are carefully curated names of plastic surgery clinics that I encountered while I was in Seoul. And I purposely chose these, the ones that are either like Konglish sounding, but ones that are engaging with a type of European language, because we also see Spanish here. And what I think it embodies is a kind of, cosmopolitan importance, right? It brings a type of status to that potential client. Oh, let me just stop this for a second. I need to just talk. So I'm going to show you the last piece of the presentation. It's called I Love the Way I Look, and it's a kind of testimonial video. So it's 4 minutes long, so I'll show that, and then I'll just say a few words about it.
There's a certain type of t-shirt that makes a woman feel and look like a woman. And I wanted that t-shirt, even though I may have not been born with it. I was fortunate to have a cute figure, but I didn't have a Shikha t-shirt. I was afraid that I looked like a boy. I remember the exact moment when I seriously started considering getting a Shikha t-shirt. And I was lucky to get in touch with t-shirt professionals who could answer all of my questions. I tend to be a bit obsessive, and I had a lot of questions about t-shirt sizes, colors, and the quality of the printing and the materials. The staff really took their time to answer all of my questions, and I felt really confident to make the decision that was best for me. I also wasn't very shy about asking others about their decision to get a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt. So why did you get a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt?
So I've wanted a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt for as long as I can remember. My boyfriend, he tried to convince me that I was beautiful the way that I was and that I didn't need a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt. But now that I got one, I'm so happy I did it. I just wanted to feel normal. It's the best money I ever spent on myself.
Seit ich mein Shikha Mipsa T-Shirt habe, bekomme ich die ganze Zeit Komplimente, wie jung ich aussehe. Das war die beste Entscheidung meines Lebens.
After I got my Shikha Mipsa t-shirt, I met someone and he just proposed to me. We set our wedding date for next year. He doesn't know that I didn't have my Shikha Mipsa t-shirt naturally. But take it from me. Get a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt if you want to be truly happy.
I considered getting a Shikha Mipsa t-shirt for years. I'm so glad I went through with it. I feel so much more confident about my body. My relationship with my husband changed drastically. He can't stop complimenting me. He was so convinced, he decided to get one for himself.
Who knew a pair of Shikha Mipsa t-shirts could make us so happy?
And by the time I was ready, I felt like I was really well informed. The result has been fantastic for me, and I decided to go with an extra small t-shirt. And the look is very, very natural. I think the size of the printing that we chose, it looks really proportional and it complements my natural shape. It feels great when I'm out in public and I get a lot of attention. But not the kind of attention that the girl gets with the super big Shikha Mipsa t-shirt, but looks that say, she looks great, and I wonder. In the long run, I believe that our individual femininity is linked to how we look, and anything that we can do to make ourselves feel more beautiful, more confident, more feminine, adds to the positive aspect of being a woman. I think I made a fantastic decision, and I love the way I look.
Okay, so the text is taken verbatim from texts that I found online of true life stories of satisfied, customers who went through breast augmentation surgery. And then you see like the main character, where I'm playing this woman doing all these different housework activities, in the video. And that's a reference to The Feminist Mystique, which is a book written by Betty Friedman in the 1950s. It's kind of like the manifesto of second wave feminism, at least for like white middle-aged feminists. And then I was also interested in, showing these interviews with the happy customer. That in this way it really is a part of this aggressive marketing campaign that really imposes a type of beauty standard on women. And it naturalizes femininity with plastic surgery consumption. So before I conclude, I also just wanted to say again that, you can see that I am an object maker. So I'm very interested with responding to all these kind of political issues going on in transnational feminism. I'm very interested in responding with my objects. And that although it's a response to theory, my practice is super intuitive. So it's very much about, I think, pushing a natural creative process in the studio. And I also want to offer really to the spectators of my work a real aesthetic experience. So even if you don't understand the multiple references that I'm using, I still want you to have a visceral experience and that you can connect to it. And if you're interested, then you can read more about my process. So thank you so much for your kind attention. I totally went over. I don't follow the rules.
If anyone would like to ask some questions?
I was just curious, in your earlier video with the lips and the German underneath it, what was she saying?
Oh, I have, maybe you didn't hear those.
I'm sorry.
I have the translation actually available on the table. No, that's okay. It's really offensive, actually, what I was saying. So I didn't want to go through the translation on the stage. I thought that if people wanted to know, they could read it, but I didn't want to impose that on them.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Kate, for a fascinating presentation. It's great to hear about your work, especially the part about the plastic surgery phenomena in Korea. And recently I was reading an article about how in Korea, one of the sort of nuances of job applications is that you have to submit a photograph for a job application. And that this is sort of one of the impetus for driving cosmetic surgery, because you have to have a little picture, and they say that those people who've had plastic surgery are the people who are getting hired compared to the other people. And I was just wondering if you, in your research, you've run across that phenomena. And
Actually, I interviewed someone who was an HR manager. I went actually to several photography studios to get my job photographs done. And actually, without even asking, they photoshopped me. So I'm not really sure if you need to get cosmetic surgery for the job photo anyway. You know, this is not just a thing limited in South Korea. In Germany, they do that as well. I mean, they've since said it's not a requirement, it's optional, but everyone still does it. You attach a photograph to your job application. I went to speak to a woman about this, and her opinion is that actually it's hyped up from the cosmetic surgery clinics and the surgeons, and that this is not really, it's not such a type of hyperbolic pressure, you know, to engage in these types of beauty practices, but it's almost like a, what is it called? It's like because people believe it so much, you know, it's like what is it called? I'm sorry, a prophecy, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Thank you. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They believe that that's the case, and then therefore they do these things. But I'm not really sure if everyone just stopped doing it. I mean, your job photos are already photoshopped anyway. It's really once you get to the interview, if you even get your foot in the door, and you can define yourself, you can differentiate yourself from the other applicants, then it's more based upon, you know, what you can offer, what qualifications you have, if you're a team player, like all these other things that are really important.
So a follow-up question on those lines is, one of the central questions you ask in your talk is about whether Koreans getting cosmetic surgery want to look more Western. And then there's this whole phenomena in Korea also of whitening skin and the whiteners, and we've seen all that play out through Southeast Asia. But it's almost as if the goal of young people wanting to get plastic surgery is not really to look more Western, but it's almost, it's like a different thing. It's like a different, it's a different aesthetic.
I can comment on that too. It's complicated, right? Because that's a question that's at the forefront of my research as well, and I don't have a really good answer for it. And the reason why I will say is I don't think it's about that anymore, but it used to be about that. So, for example, the first eyelid surgery that was done was like in the late 19th century, and it happened in Japan. And it was actually not about trying to look Caucasian. It was a Japanese woman who had both a double eyelid and a monolid, and she just wanted to have a symmetrical looking face. And it's easier, apparently, to do a double lid than it is to make two monolids. But the rise of double eyelid surgery in the United States is very much rooted in these type of racist, colonial, ideas of beauty. And I found this diary, actually, of one of the American surgeons that was stationed in South Korea after the Korean War. And he was, one of the, main surgeons there to help with reconstructive surgery for the soldiers. And he even writes in his diaries that he just decided to start changing the Oriental eye because it was inferior, because it looked suspicious, and his patients just looked too sleepy. So do I think that's what it's about now? No, I don't. But you also can't deny that there's that type of, history attached to it. So I think it's a complicated answer, right? It's not this easy, simple, do Koreans want to look white? Like, no, I wouldn't say that. But it's just like, what was said in the Atlantic, that it nods to Caucasian features without replicating them. And that's what I would say is at least references to a certain degree. And then to engage the question about the whitening. I don't think whitening your skin has anything to do with trying to be Caucasian. I think, being lighter skinned in many different cultures and countries, it denotes a type of status. It means that you weren't working in the fields, right? It means that your skin then wasn't being tanned. And then for suddenly, this has been going on for like hundreds of years, and then for suddenly this particular perspective to be imposed, I think is racist, actually. Like, somehow I wonder if, like, the West, like if the United States, if they somehow want to see themselves in, what's going on in South Korea. And I wonder if it has a bit to do with this anxiety. South Korea is like a major player. And in terms of medical tourism, people decide to go there instead of going to the United States. Korea is only the 4th in terms of the highest number of plastic surgical procedures done in the world. The US is still number 1. The US still does over 20% of procedures. And the second country is Brazil. They're at 14.6%. South Korea is only at 4.6%. But it's interesting how the narrative, gets played out in the press. Because when I first started reading about it, I thought everyone had surgery, and this is the statistic that I was saying that I was kind of skeptical of. And I'll just mention that maybe because it'd be interesting for you. So I went back to the origin of that statistic, and it comes from the International Society of Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. And if you go there and you look at the statistics, it never says that specifically. But what someone did is they looked at the number of surgeries that were taking place in South Korea, and then they compared that to the population of Korea. And they just magically came up with this number. This does not take into consideration all the foreigners that go to South Korea to get plastic surgery. They do not differentiate between Korean nationals who do it and foreigners who do it.
I, on a bus, struck up a conversation with a Korean woman, and she said that she felt sorry for Korean men because they were short of stature and slender, and they tended to get eclipsed by, say, the Chinese or the Japanese that tend to dress more provocatively or they are taller. And she was saying she thought the South Korean tend to look very, very similar and get lost in the shuffle, so to speak.
I don't know, was she talking about Koreans in Korea or Korean Americans?
Koreans right on campus. So it'd be Koreans.
I don't know what she.
I know it might be slightly off topic, but she was making a reference to Korean males.
I mean, I think that the new Korean male generation is quite virile and actually usually quite sought after by other, I mean, especially with the rise of K-pop, right? And the celebrity surrounding all these boy bands. I mean, that's at least my experience. I mean, not my personal experience, but the experience that I've had with talking to people. I mean, I don't know what I can say to her particular opinion on that. Maybe that was her experience in the United States.
I'm just thinking it may also depend on the question, the person who is the age of the person who is saying that. I was in Korea this summer, and I found Korean young men to be very tall. I was really surprised. Very tall, very handsome. They use all the cosmetics just like the women do. The men's cosmetic industry is growing. So I don't relate to that comment at all.
Maybe I can ask a question of those in the audience about, like, what kind of influence does this type of new, do-it-yourself, like, generation of, like, these beauty blogs and these videos have on you? I mean, do you feel yourself being affected by what you see? And not just specifically to South Korea, just in general.
Personally, I think this whole kind of do-it-yourself kind of form of beautifying yourself has really risen, not just within the internet age, but really the age of YouTube. More of this kind of like anyone can kind of broadcast themselves and make themselves their own channel in both the internet sense, but also in the broadcasting sense. This is where you come to see me, and it's me 24/7 if you want to just watch me. So what happens, and because I've been watching, actually personally, I watch makeup videos for the last almost 10 years. Yeah, I've been around for a while. I've noticed kind of just like the kind of the evolution of that kind of media. So originally it was very like a grounds roots. It was unedited most of the time. It was very conversational. But over time, it's become a production. It's very much so lighting specific and makeup specific, and as much makeup as you could put on your face at one time is best. And it's become more than just a very kind of like obtainable thing. Well, I think it's become even more obtainable, I guess, because everyone's kind of doing it. And in conjunction with, say, the YouTube phenomena, there's also the Instagram girl and the socialite that makes money and makes a living by being beautiful. So that's really creative.
I feel like that's something else that falls into this category of like this idea of feminist choice, or that you can empower yourself by working really hard, and then you can be beautiful and be successful as well. So.
Yes. One more question, yes, and then we'll need to...
I actually just wanted to respond and say that
thank you.
I think that sometimes in a dialogue we have, today's content has a message, and it wasn't about sort of masculinity and racism and masculinity, and so I just wanted to comment on that. But I also, in response to your question, I wanted to say I was for a while a member of an online group of women, where the woman running this group was a professor who was on sabbatical and using her sabbatical time to pursue a fulfilling career in creating her own beauty products that were based on Korean makeup and like the steps associated with makeup. And I just thought I'd mention that as well, that like sometimes in the visual medium, but also sometimes just in practice and in creation too. Sometimes people are using this and communicating it online.
I'd like to thank Kate Reed for her presentation and give her a round of applause. Thank you.